Welcome to B2B Marketers on a Mission, a podcast for change makers where we question the conventional, debunk marketing myths, provide actionable tips, think differently, disrupt industries, and take your marketing to a new level. From improving your campaigns to making you a better marketer, these are the inspirational stories that will help us change the way we think and approach B2B marketing one conversation at a time. This podcast is brought to you by Blake Consulting, helping you to stand out in the market and drive revenue to your B2B business. And now your host, Christian Klepp. All right, folks, welcome everyone to this episode of B2B Marketers on a Mission. This is the show where we help you to question the conventional, think differently, disrupt your industry, and take your marketing to new heights. This is your host, Christian Klepp, and today I'm joined by someone on a mission to set the standard for B2B content quality. So coming to us from Atlanta, Georgia, USA, Mr. Jeff Coyle, welcome back to the show, I'm going to say.
Hey, how are you? It's so great to be back. I'm looking forward to the discussion. I love how you added B2B. Typically, I'll say I'm on a mission to set the standard for content quality, but I started in B2B, and that's been so ingrained that now I'm doing all content, but B2B has always been the sweet spot for me.
Your first love, so to speak.
It was my first B2B technology before people were even. I was trying to convince people to have content on the internet.
Yes.
In the year 2000 for their products, and they're like, "Oh, what do you mean? Like a summary of? Should I list this module?" And I'm like, "Oh, y'all don't get it. You don't get it." That was me 25 years ago.
Wow.
Now life's a little different, but I think everybody knows they need great content.
Yeah, no, that's wild. That's wild. But, once again, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show.
Sure.
And Jeff, I was just trying to think about, I think the last time you were on the show must have been about 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And it was interesting. And we've had this conversation. The things that we were talking about then pertaining to generative AI and whatnot. And it was almost as if you prophesied what is to come.
It's scary. You think that I could get some lottery numbers on this or somehow hit it big, right?
Yes.
No, I know the things we were talking about. I mean, I went back and listened to it when we were connecting on email, and I was like, oh yeah, wow, that's a lot. And so much, even since we caught up for this show yet again with Google making quality standards updates. It's pretty wild and predictive.
Exactly. Much needed standard updates, in my humble opinion.
Well, they're always going to go through, and if anyone's not familiar, they did both at the same time, just to make it slightly confusing. They did a big spam update where they identified new characteristics of what makes something pure spam, as they're calling it, and then at the same time they tweaked some of their evaluation of quality just to make it a little bit more confusing for everybody.
Yeah, because why not, right?
Right. Well, whenever they do something like that, it's always going to go through periods of tweaking. So right now, I think we're in a heavy-handed moment, and there's going to probably be some tweak back on that. But I've already seen that happen. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, this is all about Reddit." Which also happened at the same time, but all that was them. They used to devalue and not value that type of content as much. But it's not just them; it's other forums and user-generated content. It's being valued, in my opinion, appropriately. Maybe a little bit too much. But you'll continuously see that get dialed to and fro as they look at the data and the activity data. So,
absolutely, absolutely. Well, without further ado, let's dive into the conversation, because we've got a bit of ground to cover today, my friend.
I love it. Let's go.
Yeah. So, we've always had great conversations, but it was something that you said in the previous conversation that really resonated with me. So you said, just for the benefit of the audience that wasn't there, right? You said that the subject matter experts within an organization are the most important B2B assets. So for this conversation, let's try to narrow it down to one of your professional missions. I'm going to use the plural here, right? But how B2B companies can leverage their subject matter experts, or let's call them SMEs for short, right? For strategic differentiation. So why don't we kick off the conversation? I'm going to do a two-pronged question here. So why do you think that SMEs are key to using AI, and why do you think that they're key, like B2B assets for an organization?
Gosh, those are great questions. I'll answer the second one first. And it's funny you mentioned this because I had a presentation that I gave in October that was called "The Rise of the Subject Matter Expert," right? And I was looking at it for one that I delivered last month, and I changed it completely. And I said, "The subject matter expert has officially risen." Why is that? From especially in a B2B context, it's because there is no differentiation in the generic in B2B. And so what we found was there was a correction almost to try to get templated in B2B online marketing, where you started to see very medium to low quality standardized structures, and then there was silos with the content marketers and like product, right? And so if you're in B2B, you probably have seen a site and it's like, oh, those are the product pages and those are the blog, and they weren't, never the two shall meet. It gets interesting. And when your business has a subject matter expert who is driving and integrated into that content strategy, you can make both of those things better, certainly. But what we find is that the teams that are most successful are using the subject matter experts to weave all of that together, to make sense, to tell the story that they actually understand the reader journey, the prospect's journey, the buyer's journey, the post-purchase troubleshooting, the post-purchase champion development, building content at all stages of that buyer journey and purchase journey all the way through is something that the content strategists and the subject matter expert, oftentimes the same person, sometimes as a product manager, they can navigate that well. And they're the only ones that typically can. And so when you have that subject matter expert or the collection of subject matter experts integrated, they can see the vision that connects the why is our definition for this topic unique? What unique value are we bringing with this seemingly standard generic article? We have to bring unique value. And they'll be able to tie that all the way through the product content, the blog content, the buyer journey, the temporal, the news, and like nobody else will. And the teams that aren't integrating or using subject matter expertise tend to have more siloing, and the content they create, they all know it. If you ask them, what's your good stuff? What's your bad stuff? They might call some of it SEO content, right? It's just not getting the same credibility as the other ones. So that's where the subject matter expert can do the most damage, is when their input is woven into the fabric of everything that we publish. The second piece of that same part of the answer is they often are the origination of what I would, you might hear some people say blue ocean or blue sky content. It's content that only those organizations can build. The subject matter expert and talented marketers, they are looking at each other and they're ideating on content that only we can build. So at MarketMuse, right, we evaluate content quality, we build content strategies. So content that we can build, that's blue ocean, is let's use our data to inform content, right? Let's actually build content using our own product. So those are things that only we can do, right? And so for you or whomever in a B2B context, the subject matter expert can typically drive and be the fuel in blue ocean content like no one else. Oh, we can do this live case study. We can build content that only we can build using our data to inform that practice. So in summary, I'd say breaking down silos, making sure expertise is woven into every page. And then number two is identifying product-led content opportunities and blue ocean opportunities. So, I'll stop there, but those are the reasons why they've got to get involved, even if they don't want to, even if they don't like writing, even if they don't like content, at least you got to start getting them involved. And I can get into some more techniques for that. Yeah.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic. No, we will definitely get into some techniques later on in the conversation. I did have a follow-up question for you, Jeff. I mean, this is great stuff.
Sure. Mhm.
You've probably seen this more times than you care to count, but why do you think there's a lot of B2B companies out there that hesitate to leverage their SMEs?
Well, gosh. Well, you actually asked me two questions before, and I didn't answer one of them. So the answer to this question
Yeah.
is being
Mm.
exaggerated by that question, right? So they
Yeah.
hesitate because they're busy. Honestly, those people are typically. I mean, so I'll give you the most obvious busy person is, let's call it, a one-person law firm, right? That's not necessarily traditional B2B, but that's like the most busy person in the world. Imagine trying to ask them to write content for the blog, right? You have that in various shapes and formats. First of all, writing's not my day to day. Typically, if I'm going to be the subject matter expert, most of the time that person isn't sitting and writing every day. So you're asking them to do something that's not in their sweet spot, and you almost have to act like a journalist, as well as you have to champion the idea of them spending their time on this and not that, right? So you got to be very, very crafty. That's number one. Number two is, in shame on content marketing, shame on search engine optimization. It's very difficult at certain business types to make the case that this is a internal thing. This isn't just something your agency deals with, right? That this is expertise required, and we do need this time. Have we made the business case? That's something that I've been working on for years, is how to get more predictive with our content. So what you'll tend to see in an organization that hasn't gotten sign off throughout the org is, they're debasing the content. Maybe they're calling it SEO content. They haven't made the business case that this is predictive. This has a valuable outcome for the whole business, right? So they're not going to get the lead product manager who can either spend his or her time doing the product work, or are they really going to spend their time writing drafts or working with doing a product interview? It's a very, very tough time, especially now as industries are so disrupted. It's tough to get people's time in there. But what I'll say is, what you see is teams that exhibit that signal are also making mistake number two, which is using artificial intelligence in ways that make their situation even worse and not making it better. So you would ask, like, why subject matter expertise with AI? Well, it is because those people who are experts are being given draft content that's generated without expertise included, and they're being asked to review it. Oh my gosh, that's like asking, Einstein to review something that plops out of AI, right? They're like, yeah, this is awful. They're always going to say it's awful. And what ends up happening is they start throwing their toys on the ground and saying, oh, AI can't build good content, or, oh gosh, it's never going to be, we just can't use this. It's not going to be good, right? But the reality is that they're not using it to their best advantage. A subject matter expert's input can be extremely important. Using your existing product documentation, using your existing, knowledge base to inform methodologies or create even agent-driven outputs, can be quick wins. And then that expert can bring their own mastery in a more productive environment. So what you're seeing here is teams are kind of spinning out of control. They're like, hey, this was so devalued and we're siloed. Let's make it worse by getting bulk. And maybe they'll want to get involved in that. And it's eating itself. Whereas you do see the sharp teams, they're using their own, maybe even sometimes hidden content assets, knowledge bases, post-sale documentation. Every article, every content item talked about at LavaCon, for example, like all of that, using that to inform, and using their experts wisely, and not asking for them to actually draft, like figuring out how to get their voice transcribed and weaving all that together with their artificial intelligence implementation. That's the key. I mean, that's what I'm doing. That's the stuff that, we're building amazing content, at scale, predictively with teams. It will always require there's some human in the loop with that expertise. It's just how you get them in that loop that becomes the elegance and the art.
Absolutely. The elegance and the art. I love it, man. You almost inadvertently came up with the title for this episode.
Nice. Nice.
Fantastic. I'm going to move us on to the next question, Jeff. And you kind of alluded to it already, the rise of the SME. So why do you believe that rise of the SME is already here? This isn't something that's happening like 10 years down the road. It's already here.
It happened. And we were talking about it I was seeing I saw the truck coming, and and the sharp content shops did too. And the waves that I saw were when I had thought that the mediocre content word was going to be, we were going to go to infinite supply, right, of the mediocre content word. That was when I was talking about, gosh, who is going to rise from the ashes? Who is going to come out from this, a catastrophic explosion, right? And this was, right? This was where, there were entire industries rocked, content writing services that were writing bulk or writing medium quality are now zero, right? All of those businesses had to adapt. Some people haven't come to grips with that, and they are still trying to operate and thinking they're going to come without building great content. But the practice I went through was to say, who cannot be immediately replicated, who cannot be replicated ever, who can become the master operator of pipelines, of these processes. And those are the people with the access to the knowledge, the single sources of truth, and a subject matter expert who has the unique experiences. They have the expertise. They understand not only how to say, hey, that doesn't, JDLR just doesn't look right, but they also know why and how. They have that experience. What we're now seeing is the bar for quality going up, 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 up. So the only stuff that's hanging out and living on is when it is uniquely differentiated. There was a update long ago, which was the SEOs will call it a QDF. It was query deserves freshness, right? We haven't had this declared, but there's things happening where I'm seeing signals of query deserves expertise, and query deserves experience, where your site is no longer okay unless it's showing that you actually have done something, right? And within this construct. And it's not just people say naturally they understand that if you're talking about, reviewing the best mouse, right? It's how are you exhibiting expertise and exhibiting experience throughout all the content that you create. So we know you aren't, some sort of, and I don't say robots because I build content with AI all the time, and I build better content than I can ever imagine with it. But where you aren't mediocre, right? And the next wave after that is going to be not just defining quality, it's going to be defining mediocrity and sameness. And that's what's happening right now. So if we're talking about what we're predicting right now, it's going to happen real fast. It's going to be announcements of almost the declaration of a requirement for being the first to act, to bring information to the world, right? Because that is going to be that the precious diamond. The precious gem is that you brought this information to the world first and in a way that is always going to be thumbprinted to you. It's always going to be connected with you because you brought it to the world in a blue ocean way. So I can say 1 + 1 is 2, and I can put that on a web page. Everybody can write that. There's no redeeming connection to me, right? But when I bring a a content brief walkthrough of the way that I build content briefs, and part of my content brief is that I am able to show you concepts that would truly differentiate your page, right? I'm getting a little meta here. By doing that, I'm actually differentiating myself by telling you how to differentiate yourself. But you have to come up with that. I love seeing websites that are using what makes them special, what's in that subject matter expert's head to accomplish a task that a mediocre B2B team would accomplish generically. I'll give you my favorite example because I used to manage whatis.com, one of the most powerful websites in the world, right? And a definition is my favorite example because anyone can write the definition for what is a Boston Terrier, right? How is yours special? That's the thing the subject matter expert brings and the creative marketer brings. And creative uses of artificial intelligence can tip you to say, hey, Jeff, when you write that definition, make sure you're picking up your dog and showing him us, right? and yeah, for some reason he came up
here.
You
have that prop there, right? Like,
yeah, he just sits here and waits for me to put him on camera. But no, make sure you have the dog in the picture. It might not be enough. Maybe the query requires expertise such that you need a veterinarian, to chime in. Maybe you need an interview with a veterinarian about brachycephaly, which is the thing that makes those dogs breathe and snore in your face when you're trying to sleep. And so and what I just did was a little bit of a parlor trick, because in my response, you know what I did? I exhibited expertise and experience very naturally, because I picked up the dog and I mentioned the vocabulary word brachycephaly, right? So you got to do that throughout. And you got to do that all the time. Not allowed to have crappy content on the site. The time has now. If you don't know how HCU works, helpful content update, you can no longer silo the crappy content over there and say, it's okay. That's our SEO content. All of your content is working together, and the bad stuff creates a sandbag that pulls your hot air balloon down so that even your best article will underperform. So all your garbage is no longer okay being garbage over in the corner. You actually have to clean up. And a lot of these companies don't want to clean up. That's my biggest challenge. Number one challenge 2024 that I'm hearing is these teams thought they were just going to get away with it. They thought they were going to get away with not having to clean up the house. And a lot of those companies, sadly, have had really bad Q1s. If you look at the traffic to a lot of the companies, you can drive a lot of it back to over monetization, aggressive affiliate, low quality content.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's part of your professional mission, or I should say your crusade, right? To fight against that mediocrity, right?
Well, it is.
I'm going to get all historical on you there, but
yeah, no, it is. I want to my first thing is I wanted to give people a way to quantify it, right?
Right.
And I'm actually writing a narrative right now called The Evolution of Content Quality. And so the first wave was, can I evaluate this solely based on the world of information? And that was what, our first patent, and this doesn't come organically. I was an SEO who built a network that was generating tens of millions of B2B leads a year, right? For a company that we got sold to a publisher. And then I worked with a company that had hundreds of writers, and I had to learn how to give them recommendations and not have them shot back at me. Basically, they're like, don't tell me what to write, And I'm like, and they were the experts. Shame on me. I should have given them all hugs and loved them from day one, but I wanted them to do what I wanted them to do. And at the time, you know, you could get away with a lot weaker content. What I recognize now is those people, those amazing editors, those amazing subject matter experts could have been embraced and amplified and sped up, because they're slow, right? You got to speed them up, especially now, right? We used to call them the SE slows, right? SE slows. Yeah. They might get to SEO, but it's going to be slow, right? Yeah.
Sure.
And you know, they'll do an SEO edit at the end of their process, but gosh, oh my gosh, so slow. You might get 2 articles out a month. You know, you got to pump. You got to pump, and you got to be fast, and you got to be great, right? So you need the helping hand. You need the machine um, acting as, like I mentioned, the elegant adding new art, because you know, the AI content in its current state is art. It's masquerading as science, but there are the artistic aspects are what make this uniquely special. But the evolution has gone farther than just linguistics. Um, certainly farther than comparing to one's competitors. It was never there. People thought it was that, you know, to copy your competitors. So we go through the evolution of compare yourself. Think about linguistics. Now we're getting into extraordinarily advanced linguistics concepts, and the untangible, which is the human experience and the human expertise and your point of view. So when you weave those 3 or 4 things together, that's how you define quality today. In a way, you know, 10 years ago when I started, you know, when I was co-founded MarketMuse, I was actually a year late. My co-founder started it and built the original technology, and I was the person who did all the workflows. So I got brought in as a late co-founder. But this was my mission. I found him, and he was already working on it amazingly. But the big difference in 10 years is, at one time, it was done by just competitive references and basic language modeling. Now it's this much more complex linguistic science, and the addition of the requirement to have unique differentiated value.
Absolutely. I love how you brought that up about linguistics. I saw a post on LinkedIn. It was a couple of months ago, and the name of the AI escapes me right now. But the guy conducted an experiment where he's kind of doing something like this, and he's saying a sentence in English, and then he has the AI translate whatever it is he said into German and in Spanish. And I got tagged on the post because I speak German, and then somebody said, "Christian, what do you make of the translation?" And I said, I can understand what he's trying to say, but no German speaker would ever say it that way. Right? So I think the AI got the idea, right? It was the intention was there. It just lacked that human element that, okay, we would never use that expression in that language, right? Yeah. For example. So it was almost like a direct translation, right?
Right. and that's where, so I mean, you can't think of a market more disrupted than translation right now, right?
Right.
Yeah. And it is, again, it's another level of ignorance. And I had that ignorance when I wanted performance marketing first, editorial second, right? And it didn't need to be a severed alliance. It needed to be a combined alliance, and could have been even more magical than was. In this case, you've got to, if you're translation and localization, you can't be anti-artificial intelligence. You've got to be the one that figures out how to use it to do magical things, because then that moat you create is real hard for someone who thinks they're going to do it all with machine translation, right? And that's where we are now. Maybe 3 years from now, 2 years from now, 1 year from now, you'll start to get better translation. That is a beatable game, as sad as people might not want to hear it. I've seen it, just like mathematics. You hear people say, "Oh, you can't do complex math with AI. Like, I'm like, yeah, you can, just not the one you have on your phone for $20. Trust me. I've seen some complex, amazing AI doing, college and university and better mathematics that were beyond my pay grade. And I went to Georgia Tech, and I'm like, holy cow, that's amazing. But what you mentioned is fun because it brings you back to linguistics. Language models have this amazing power to understand language the way that language actually works. And what it brought me to do was go back to my linguistics training and the kind of rebuild my own knowledge. I had always been focused on these things because part of what we do is building knowledge graphs and topic models and graph analysis. But I recommend anyone right now learn how semantics work, learn linguistics, learn knowledge graphs. The big breakthroughs that I've had in the past 2 years, and I've been working with natural language generation and LLMs and LMs before they were L, for now, 6, 7,
Yeah.
8 years. I've touched them all. We released our own before GPT, around the same time as GPT-3, when it took 5 days to make a draft and it cost like $30 worth of compute time. Now that can be built for fractions of a penny instantly. But the breakthroughs that I've had have been where I've learned something about the way that language works and been able to apply that in ways nobody else can. And so I really challenge everybody to learn about. And it may sound boring, but it's not. Well, it's not if you're me. It might be to you, but how you can build structure out of what might feel like it's unstructured, right? And that's the future. The future, you're going to hear the word knowledge graphs if you're a marketer. Oh, you're going to hear the word knowledge graphs so much in the next few years. Your brain's going to want to throw knowledge graphs in the garbage. But you got to know what that's something it's going to be kind of a day one thing in the future, because making structure where there is no structure, it's the way that you can control this magic that we now have on our phones. I mean, and it is truly magic. I can do, you know, I personally can do about 10 times the amount of work that I used to do. I know that's going to become, tens of X's for the average person. And I love the fact that I can do that without jeopardizing quality. But I see people all the time and they're doubling their productivity, but they're jeopardizing quality. Um, and so you've got to be like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to learn what it's going to take for me to improve my velocity without impacting quality, because it can happen. And a lot of it has to do with being passionate about something and also being a subject matter expert, which thankfully I am on SEO. Kind of been doing this for a while. So, I'm able to kind of have a leg ahead on that. And most times all I do is sit around and look at search results. But no matter what you're good at, no matter what your focus area is, you can bring that to the table really creatively and magically right now. So
Absolutely, absolutely. You reminded me of it's not an adage, but he was the former CEO of a big advertising agency called TBWA, and he wrote a book called How Disruption Brought Order. Right? I mean, you're talking about an oxymoron, right?
yeah,
But just to your point, that's exactly what it is, right? It's basically taking something and disrupting it to create a better version
yeah,
of that end result, right?
it's still chilling.
Yeah,
I mean, it's still chilling
yeah,
and
sure, of
it's
course,
still
of course.
horrifying. I mean, go to the G2. You look
Yeah,
at how many categories of software there are in B2B. Um,
yeah,
Many of those are at jeopardy of being wiped out.
absolutely,
And that nobody
absolutely.
wants to hear that, right? They
Of
don't
course
want
not.
to
Yeah,
think that that's possible, but it's,
yeah,
it is real. It's happening.
yeah,
It's happening as we speak. teams may pivot, they may put on a happy face, they may burn a lot of cash that you can't see to try to fight against that disruption. And some of them will succeed and some of them won't. But there's entire sectors, and I'm talking, mega billions dollar sectors with Fortune 500 companies in them, where those entire sectors, one major multimodal release and the sector's gone or in jeopardy. One, major shift in the way that, a particular branch of AI works, right? And you're going to have tremendous disruption again. So yeah, that's, I hate to end with doom and gloom. I see it as, I see it as a situation where you got to think blue ocean. Where is your moat? The moat could go away, and then you got to think of another moat. Just to be blunt, I mean, I built the first content brief in software, and I let it sit around too long, and then there was 40 other briefs on the market. Right? And you can't let your stuff sit on the shelf. And so what did I do? I just built a new, with my amazing engineering team, built a new content brief technology that is a year ahead of the market. And I'm so excited about it, if you can tell. And it launches in the next it launches in the next few months. But I might have bought myself a year. I don't think that I bought myself 6 years. Right? I might have bought myself a year with that. So, that's why product management has changed so much, because you can't sit around and talk about something for 6 months anymore, because there isn't something that isn't likely to be obsolete in a year. And that scares the heck out of people. A lot of times larger teams are spending that long just writing their specs. Well, that world is no longer.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Jeff, we get to the point in the conversation, we're talking about actionable tips, and you've given us plenty. You've given us plenty of these past couple of minutes, but if somebody were listening to this interview and you'd want them to walk away with 3 to 5 things that they can take action on right now, specifically on this topic, right, of leveraging SMEs within the organization, what would you want them to do?
I think step 1 is retrieval augmented generation is not a 3 or 4 letter word. All right. Even though it's a complicated one, you'll hear it called RAG or RAG. What you need to do is learn why that's special for you. So how can you get your experts' knowledge to be a data source for an agent or for some of your advanced stuff? If you think that AI can't do something, ask all your friends, get in a Slack group, go to an event like MAICon or MAICon, which I'll be speaking at this summer. Go to that event and ask people, can AI do this? And guess what? Most likely they're going to have an answer that it can. It just might not be the way you think it is. So don't dismiss that AI can't do something, because it's just probably the thing you have on your phone, not AI in general. And number 3, if you've never thought about knowledge graphs, semantics, linguistics at all, or whether you do, you're a casual learner, go watch a few videos, read a few things about them, just get a 101 understanding of how that stuff works, spend a few hours, see if it's something that you're interested in. There's a conference called the Knowledge Graph Conference. It's actually in a couple of weeks. I can't go, which is terrible. I usually go. I have a conflict. It's up in New York. And just read through, understand what those people do. You see if it's going to help you. But if I were to take 3 things, it's RAG, it's don't dismiss that AI can't do something, and it's try to figure out who in your company cares about structured data and cares about knowledge graphs. And maybe it'll be you.
Fantastic.
Yep.
And when in doubt, contact Jeff Coyle.
When in doubt, Jeff at marketmuse.com, Jeffrey_Coyle on Twitter. I'd give you my cell phone if I could safely. I really do love
Yeah,
this
just
stuff.
maybe not.
I answer everything. I answer everything. I know I love this stuff. And if you are having a
Yeah.
bad time with your website, don't
Mhm,
pound sand right now. A lot of people are like, "Oh, content doesn't work anymore." Crunch. It does.
mhm.
This time could be hard for a lot of folks, and I'm going through it with a lot of customers who maybe cut a corner here and there. And some friends who I don't work with who have come and said, "Is this dead?" You know, and my response is to say, "You're in a really tough spot. You got a lot of work to do, and you got to make a decision if this is the path forward. If you have been wronged, though, find someone you trust who will evaluate your site, and can give you honest feedback."
Fantastic, fantastic. Jeff, I've got two more questions for you before I let you
Sure.
go. All right.
Got it. Hmm.
So get up on your soapbox. I kind of have a feeling you've been up there already, but just stay up a while longer, please.
Always.
Um, a status quo in your area of expertise that you passionately disagree with, and why?
Oh man, correlation SEO.
Okay.
Correlation SEO is the idea that you can copy your competitors, um, and derive meaningful recommendations only and isolated ways just by looking at correlations. I feel like there's some merits, um, in correlation. There's you can learn a lot from it, but it is a component of the overall story. So that's one where I tremendously struggle with it. It's been kind of it ebbs and flows in popularity, and every time the beast sticks its head out, I am certainly one of the folks trying to swing a blade at it, because it can cause pain. It can cause companies to go out of business. It can be very, very devastating when done um, inappropriately for business. If you have an affiliate site and you're using that kind of snake oil, right? And it goes up and then it goes out of business, you go make a new site, try again. But if this is a 50-year-old B2B brand, no, 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 do not, do not do that. Another one is um, similar to that, but not the same, is uh, identifying zoning. So um, in our world, different websites get evaluated in different ways based on the concept or zone they operate in. And so one thing we see in our industry is people professing case studies, but the websites in the case studies are coming from zones that are regulated differently than yours. So, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I saw a person saying that they were going to emulate the strategy they got from a poker affiliate site case study on their B2B
What?
software site. On their B2B
Yeah.
software site. And
Talk about a gamble, eh?
oh, it's the ultimate gamble is my response. Good. All right, what great minds think alike. And another one, nutraceuticals, uh, body creams, beauty products, gambling, gaming, board gaming, video gaming, pornography. None of those things you can learn from them, right? You can learn what is aggressive. You can learn what is, you know, on the edge. You can learn maybe what not to do in some cases, but watch out for those case studies. Because once those sites drop, the case studies magically disappear. And people think that there is no archive.org, but there is. You can go look and see the case study. Then you go find the site. And guess what? It's gone. It's like magically gone. And um, so the two things really all tie back to quality. There isn't a magic bullet, right? Um, for you in B2B tech. It's going to be hard. You're probably going to have to clean up a lot of garbage. But AI en masse ain't your magic bullet. And that's what's people are advocating that right now. And that's the new hot thing is, oh, we've got this secret sweet spot for this. And this is coming from a person literally automating content strategy with AI, which is what I've done. Right. And I'm the one telling you, do not do this unsupervised. And I've got all the pieces that would enable you to do it unsupervised. And I'm saying, please drive this Lamborghini carefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Please don't do it. Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's really hard to be in that zone because I'm trying to solve the problem. But it's to your cool point though. It was when you said, hey, you translated German. No German would actually say that, right? They got that, you don't want to put out content that when someone or when something reads this, they go unnatural, not an idiom in use. I'm looking around my room to find other props, but I collect poker chips in case you're wondering. So I'm usually to your thing. So like this chip is called, if only an expert would know, that's called a fractional. Who in the heck would know that's a fractional, right? Who would know that this other one's called a snapper? And that other thing's called a lammer. These are things that only people in the biz would know.
Yes.
That's what you got. That's what your site's got to do. It's got to show them. You got to show them, them. And that is my last word.
Fantastic. All right. Last question, which is a bonus question. Let's just assume that after this interview, right, you get a phone call and it's I don't want to say Elon Musk, but somebody in that caliber who's not overly controversial, who's got tons of money, and he says, hey Jeff, you know what? Listen to the interview, love what you do. I'll tell you what, I am gonna finance your next project, and you can build whatever technology you want for the purpose of improving humanity. So I know that that's super broad, and I guess that was kind of the objective of the exercise, right? If you had this mystery benefactor that said that I am going to finance your next technology project, right? What technology would you build and why?
Well, when you expanded it to be like for the greater good of society, I get crazy, but until you said that, I'm going to keep my scope. My answer is absolutely here. It is to perfect my fact checker. The disruption and the wars and the societal construct, the chaos that's going to come from the American election this fall, a lot of it comes from the inadequacy of fact checking. And fact checking is a very difficult discipline. It isn't refined with technology, but I've shown through linguistics that it can be done. And I've gotten pretty far. With the right investment, a perfected fact checker is possible. And I feel like the good that will bring to the world is very difficult to measure, but I know in my heart that, and I dream about the day that somebody puts that out, whether it's me or not, because I think it's going to make the world a better place.
Without a doubt. I couldn't have thought of a better one myself. That one, I mean, fact checking. I mean, you look at the you look at everything in the news now, and how many times do you see a report or a video or an interview where they bring on somebody to fact check what somebody said, right? Congressional hearing, and somebody said something. Okay, was that how much of that was true and how much of that was not, right?
Right.
Or somebody made a speech. Talk to us, separate fact from fiction. And I lost count of how many times you hear that, right?
Well, it's not just that though. And this is the part that, and I love it. So yes, everything you said just resonates. But what I've learned about this, and by the way, I've been building something in this space. It launches the next few months. If you want a preview of it, Jeff at MarketMuse.com. Christian, I'll give you a preview.
Please.
Well, when you're thinking about this, sometimes things stated can't possibly be true. And that blew my mind. Just by the way it was stated, it can't possibly be a good, qualifiable thing. There's an entire book. I forget who wrote it, Bloom maybe, or you have to look it up. It's like 60 pages, and it's all fact-checking process. It's the manual work that people have done to go through this process, right? Well, when you listen to or read an article, it's interesting that we just naturally say things that aren't great sentences. No matter what you do to them, they're not going to be defendable. And that really blew my mind. About a year and a half ago, I remember, because I was at a conference, and I was in an airport, and someone said to me what you just almost did. And they said, I'll give you a bunch of money to do this, to fund this, whenever you want, because you're the one person that can solve this problem, because I've seen the work. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of already starting to build pieces of it. I don't know if I can get it to this eclipse without, $100 million, which is, what I think you would need to do this, right? Case Elon, you're listening. Let's do it. I'll ride that Cybertruck around if you want to drop 100 mil for me. Yeah, I'm a stockholder too. No, the way, what I learned was, a lot of your writing, a lot of one's writing, and no matter how good it feels to them, it's just not good. And I never knew that, and I never knew why. So I was like literally sitting there diagramming sentences and like going back to elementary English to be able to get here. But just know, like, there are ways that you can evaluate content that you never imagined. And it really comes back to linguistic science. So if you've got a linguist in your life, send them some a gift and tell them to teach you stuff, because I luckily have a few in my life, and I've learned like immeasurable amounts from them in the past few years. So yeah.
Fantastic. Jeff, as expected, and this was such an awesome conversation. And I hope the audience also walks away with something that they can take action on. And you've already given us your contact details, and I'll be sure to drop them in the notes. But I just want to thank you again for your time and for coming on the show again.
Thanks so much. I love this stuff, and we'll get another one recorded in a little bit, and we can talk about the what's coming in 2026. Who knows? It's a pleasure. See you later.
You got yourself a deal. Thanks so much, Jeff. Right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.